The business is quite different now. Just forget it. Record companies, all that's done. It's all MP3s now. It's the quality. You can hear the difference. If you compare an MP3 to a WAV and you listen to them, it's amazing difference.
That's Dennis Moody, studio and live mixer for some of the world's top musicians. From 2014 until today, he's seen the industry change in real time, giving him a clear perspective on how technology continues to shape the way we experience music.
I was traveling a lot with the jazz fusion people back then. It was pretty much 8 to 10 times a year to Europe.
By working across nearly 100 countries, Dennis has seen how music and technology has evolved through the years. This has given him an understanding of the industry that only comes from constant hands-on experience.
You don't need to go to the $40,000 classic vintage mic when there's so many other choices that are emulations of that are quite good.
Today, marking episode 600, Dennis returns for yet another milestone appearance. After joining us for episodes number 1, 100, 200, 300, 400, and 500, he breaks down how modern gear has evolved and how smart choices, not expensive gear, determine the sound of a record. By the end of this conversation, you'll learn how today's tools, used with the right approach, deliver the same value sound engineers used to chase with big budget gear. Stick around. I'm Bobby Owsinski, and this is the Inner Circle Podcast. First of all, thanks for celebrating number 600 with me. The first one was April 1st, 2014.
Wow, it's been that long, huh?
It's been that long, so it's a little over 11 years. What were you doing back then? Were you in April of 2014?
Probably getting on and off of an airplane going somewhere. I was traveling a lot with the jazz fusion people back then, the Mike Stern, Weckel, Randy Brecker, and between the three of them, it was pretty much 8 to 10 times a year to Europe and insane travels, plus my studio here. So
looking back, 2014, did you expect that you'd be kind of where you are today?
Yes, because I wanted to be, but and hoping to be even a little more level up, which it seems to be now. Working with some really great people now, and back then it'd be like had a really cool guy, retired. He hadn't played sax in 20 years, and we did a recording. It was a little rough, and I got hired to tune a soprano sax. Yeah, can you tune this and send me the file back and stuff like that? I'm doing a lot less of that these days and more projects. So that's been really nice with some really talented people. So
how has the gear changed in that time?
I'm seeing a lot of really, I'll call them knockoff companies, like my favorite, Warm Audio. So that's one. This is interesting. And Paul Wolf made a statement. I saw a little podcast with him, Paul Wolf from API, and now Wolf Audio. He made a little, he had these little blogs he does, and he brought up a really interesting point that people are trying to emulate vintage gear instead of the way the gear sounded when it was new, that vintage gear. And so I think a lot of companies coming around to just making it what it's supposed to be, a new, and not emulating old. And I found that the knockoffs are so good, I can't, I don't want to spend my savings on 2 vintage Pultecs for, what are they now, $8,000 each? Remember when I had those at Sonora? I had a whole rack full of all that stuff. Gee, I wish I had it now. I could retire. With the quality of the gear people are using, it's, especially like Warm Audio, for example, Bryce over there in Texas with his company, they just some amazing stuff coming out, so you don't need to go to the $40,000, U47 classic vintage mic when there's so many other choices that are emulations of that are quite good,
You mentioned Paul Wolf, and I had him on the podcast a few years ago. And he was fascinating because he started to go into, I'm not going to say the minutia, but the details of consoles, the differences between consoles. And you think you know some of these things, but he would go a level deeper and you go, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, no kidding. And it's like, well, it sounds like this because this happens, and then over here, and it's like, wow, this is amazing.
Sometimes I call him and ask him questions about I'm an API freak. That's my console. If I wish I could get a vintage 48 channel or 72 channel old API and have it all restored to new, but it's just not worth doing these days, for that. But he's answers all my questions for all that old stuff.
Okay, again, let's go back and compare. So it's 2014, and what would have surprised you about the way things are today? The business, the gear, everything.
God, it's hard to say. That's 11 years ago. The gear, the knockoff gear is getting better. So that's surprising. Well, I'm not sure if that is surprising because that's just technological advances. So I'm not sure if that's actually surprises me, but I'm happy about it. The business is quite different. Now, just forget it. Record companies, that's all that's done. I think you sign a contract with a company to try and get some licensing or something. There's no record sales, CDs. They make them to sell at shows now, people, or used for PR. But I haven't burned a CD after a session. And I just bought a new spindle of 100 CDs about a year ago, and I think I used 3 of them.
Yeah.
It's all MP3s now, which is kind of sad because the quality, you can hear the difference.
Yeah.
If you compare an MP3 to a wave, a 16, 44-116, even at 44-116 wave, and you listen to them, it's amazing the difference. But people, that's just the way it is now.
Let's talk about travel for a second. You're the most traveled person I know. I've been to 55 countries, I think, and I know you way surpass me. So how many countries have you been to?
98 as of this last trip that I didn't talk to you about. That's a surprise one. I booked these last minute trips. So I was at 95 and I wanted to take a trip. And I'm doing this every 6 months now. I actually had one in mind for the end of November, but I just got too many bookings. I can't keep telling people I'm not available one of these days. They're going to believe me.
Yeah, right.
So about 2 weeks before I went to, I just got online and I booked a ticket, used some money and some points, flew business class to Hong Kong, went to, had a 3-hour layover and went to Hanoi, Vietnam, stayed there 3 days, went to, from there I went to Laos, Laos from there and spent 2 days. I wish I had spent one more day there and gone to the elephant sanctuaries, but went to Laos and then I went to Cambodia and then back to Vietnam and then back home. 2 weeks, and it was incredible, absolutely incredible. But that got me up to 98. So, yeah.
It's funny because I did not quite the same thing, but I guess it was in March. I also did Hong Kong and Vietnam and let's see, Tokyo, and where else was in there? Jeju Island in South Korea, which I didn't know what that was, and apparently it's their version of Hawaii.
Yeah. Back in 97, I lived in Korea for 4 months. I had an apartment there. I worked for a guy at a studio, and they said, sorry, we're going to Jeju for the weekend. It's an hour flight from Seoul.
All right. So let's stay in the travel realm for a second. What do you travel with? So in other words, everybody has their own favorite list of things that they take with them. How about you?
Okay. Of course, I have one little bag of toiletries, toothbrush, deodorant, that. And then I have another one with some stuff you use once in a shave, stuff, clippers, blah, blah, blah. I carry very light. I don't overpack. I have one roller bag, which actually I got at IKEA for $80. This is amazing. That thing's been around, circumnavigated the globe at least 12, 14 times. And it's, I can unzip it. So if it's, those little CR regional jets, the little tiny bag, they go, that won't fit. You have to check it. And I unzip it, and it gives me two little tiny, one's a backpack and one's a where I put my stuff. And then I carry it's a roller, so that's good. I have a little back sack. We call them in Germany Rucksack, and I put my sweatshirt in there, which I just left on the plane, my best one last week. Yeah, and I have my little bag for touring, for shows. I have a little bag. It's an art bag. It's about 1 foot by 10 inches. It unzips on the top, and I put thumb drives in there, some connectors, some cables. I have an iPod Touch in there, so I can play some music. Marker tape and some Sharpies and some pens and a little microphone adapters. Not much anymore. I carry that with me. And that's it. Very, very light. Jacket, I try not to bring unless I'll bring one to Providence when I go tomorrow, because I hear it's in the 40s. So, yeah, I go really light.
Hey, quick pause. Have you ever felt like your mixes are close, but just not quite to the level that you hear from the pros? The truth is, even with today's powerful home studios, it's the techniques that make all the difference. The Mixing Engineer's Handbook, now in its 6th edition, walks you through these techniques step by step, from EQ and compression to immersive audio and the latest plugins. You'll also hear directly from some of the world's top mixers through exclusive interviews and bonus content. If you want your mixes to sound polished and professional no matter what setup you're working on, scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the show notes. Now, back to the conversation. Okay, so for your show bag, how has that changed in 11 years?
It hasn't.
Really? It hasn't?
No.
I'm shocked. I would have thought you'd taken more.
Thumb drives, I duplicate them because sometimes they won't read them, and I always put them up I always put the file up on my Dropbox just in case it's an emergency. I can't get it loaded. Marker tape, right here. I'll show you. And Sharpies, the stuff. Yeah. This stuff used to be $2.99 a roll, remember?
Yeah, I do, and not now. How much
it is now? It's almost $20 a roll.
Yeah.
It's shocking. Well, that's it. I bring a pencil, a couple little depths. No, it's been that way I used to carry more. I used to carry 1/8-inch phone to XLR male, so I could play back if I needed to. And I stopped doing that because I was in Austria with Dave Weckel's band, and the guy plugged in the console and he didn't turn off the Phantom.
Oh.
Yeah. The first day of the tour, blew out my iPhone. Couldn't listen to any music to check the PA before. But no, it's always the same stuff. In fact, the tape I don't even need sometimes. I put it up anyway because I put markings all over the board. I don't want to think. I want to immerse myself in the mix and what's going on, and I don't want to look around and try and read those little scroll strips put in there. So I use tape, and that's it. Hasn't changed.
You're a very different live mixer than most. And I think it must be because your studio experience, or maybe you just learned the right way. I'm not sure, but
thanks.
Whenever I listen to one of your shows, it sounds like I'm in the studio. As opposed to other shows which are so low-end heavy and kick drum heavy. And that's never the case with you.
No, that's not how a band sounds to me. Yeah, I go to shows too. Here's the bass drum.
Yeah.
Here's the vocal. Here's the band. Yeah, it's challenging sometimes because some of the people I work with, some of the one-off artists or things, certain markets, they want that newer sound. So I have to turn it up louder and I have to put the kick up a little louder. They want it, but you can feel it. I still, after sound check and I get my notes, which is very rare. Nobody even asks me. I just do it. I put it back how I had it. I did, like with the last Persian artist I did, most fun tour I've ever done, by the way, ever. There's just so the audience is just, it was most stressful, yet once the show started, it just was the most fun ever. I'd do sound check, and then the musical director come out, have me change everything, and then I'd actually recall my other mix. And I told him I was doing that, and he's just wasting everybody's time up there because, talk to the people in the audience after the show about the sound, and what do they say? They say it was fantastic. I actually get standing ovation around the soundboard once from one of his shows, actually more than one show. Wow. Just very flattering, but back to the point of mixing how I mix versus how they perceive the mix should be. I'm not going to blow people out. I had one show where I was 108 dB average. That's painful.
Yeah, right. That's way too high.
Yeah. So I have a couple little tricks I pulled on them to get them to stop pressuring me about it. I'll have to tell you off camera.
Stage volume has gone down. Has it not?
Yeah, it has. But the kind of bands I work with have always been like the Boingo guys. What's the 5 or 6 or 7 that are still in the band? They've always been at the same level. The bass is always loud, and the lead guitar is always loud. The rest of them are pretty consistent, but they are too. They're consistent, but they're loud. I have to always mention, can you turn down a little so I don't have to mix the whole band up to your level off the stage. And with Ambrosia, I'm doing Ambrosia now. Remember them?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
From my high school in San Pedro, a few years ahead of me. And I just started working with them about 2 years ago. Great band. I mean, their shows are fantastic. And I never get any notes from them. I just mix it, and the people say it's great, So yeah, they're doing all DIs now.
Really?
The guitar player, everything's DI. Yeah, they have no amps on stage, and his is actually off stage. So I'm just dealing with drums. So that's interesting because you have to make sure the PA is configured for that, because if you're in the front row, you don't hear anything off the stage.
Yeah.
It's not sound reinforcements, it's the entire sound. So you really have to check the front fills. You have to have some side fills, for the audience, and that's been interesting.
Is there a separate monitor mixer for that, or are you doing it from the front?
They're doing the monitor. No, I won't. I don't. If it's not at a little club where I can walk 5 steps up to the stage or 10 steps up to the stage and say, what, you're making all these signals. I don't know what you mean. I actually want a monitor mixer, even if they're on the same console with an iPad, mixing off of some aux sends. But in doing that, I can't touch any preamps, And that's the problem. I'm all over preamps during the show. They're part of the mixing process for me. I'm balancing things, and I'll always on them. But when you have a monitor, have to share a monitor from front house, you can't do that. So I pretty much don't do those anymore.
That's really interesting that you changed the preamp levels, because most mixers, engineers would set them and forget them.
No, that's part of it.
Yeah.
Adding gain or reducing gain on a preamp changes everything behind it. So if you have a compressor, you got a guy singing low, and you turn his fader up, you're changing the way the compressor is acting, and the vocals. Yeah. So after an hour, the end of an hour, the singer is singing lighter, I turn the preamp up on their vocal to get more gain out of them. They're not singing as much as they were in the first two songs, they're especially the people in my age range of bands I'm working with.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Okay, so you sort of mentioned this before, but it may not be the same answer. Well, let's just, again, talk through these 11 years here. What's the best gig you've done in that time?
Best or the most interesting?
Okay, the most interesting will work too.
I did one, I may have mentioned it. I did one at the Microsoft down there in LA, Microsoft Theater, now called Peacock. I think it's Peacock Center now. And I did a show for a Persian guy. I can't even remember his name now, but he wanted to have the biggest orchestra ever. I want the big, they always want the biggest, the best. So he had 160 fully mic'd orchestra, 160 piece fully mic'd orchestra. He had like 8 percussionists, 24 first violins, second violins, 12, cello, 12. It was huge production, and I had 2 consoles going. That was really fun, and it turned out great. It turned out perfect. There had 8,500 people there, and it was just absolutely amazing. It turned out perfect. Choir at the end, he had come on stage in the back, probably 40 people, and had 8 mics. I was using SM81s for the choir. I put them up about 7 feet tall and pointed them down, like that. So above their heads, and just that was my choir mics. I had 8 mics on a row behind the percussionists. They came on for the last song, and that was down there. And we planned it. I use Anti-M Sound, Martin over at Anti-M Sound, great company. And I went over to their shop, which is about 10 minutes from me, which is really convenient. And we planned everything. We pre-programmed everything in advance. 2 consoles. I had a CL5 as my main console, and the side console was old this M7CL, which people hate. I actually love that console. It's 48 faders there, and the reason I got that one was so I could see everything. I had no time to flip pages on that while I'm working on the main console. That show was really fun and interesting. I did another show for the daughter-in-law of the president of Armenia. Her name is Chirusho, and it was amazing. They had choirs, they had acrobats, they had pyrotechnics, they had video cues, they had playbacks, they had a band, everything. And I flew in from Vancouver with the musical director. We did a show the night before, and we drove from LAX straight over to the Microsoft. And I had never heard the music. I had no idea. I had kind of an idea of what it was going to be. And that was another show that turned out perfect. That was fun. Those are fun. And one more that I've been doing lately is with Ambrosia, with the orchestras behind him. And unfortunately, the venues just didn't have that good of sound system. So the first one was outside, and it was covered by a shell. It was in Columbus, Ohio, covered by a shell, and it sounded like they were in a giant aquarium. I just sitting there go, it sounds like they're singing inside of a Sparklets bottle.
Jeez.
On a grand scale, it just didn't sound good. And we did one last week in Dallas, and that wasn't fun. It was too much.
All right. Well, let's go the other way then. You don't have to name names on this, but what's the worst gig that you did?
Let's see.
Oh, there's that many of them, huh?
It depends. Sometimes it's not the gig itself. It's all the other stuff around the gig. Yeah. We did some where it was raining and there's 6 inches of water on the stage.
Oh.
And before the show, and then all of a sudden it dries up, and we go to those. I've had a few of those last year in the South, and Birmingham, Alabama. It was pouring rain, water everywhere. I have a little video of it. I'll have to show you sometime of, 3 inches of water over electrical cables.
Oh,
and then all of a sudden the sun comes out and it immediately dries up and we go do the show. Traveling can be a bitch on the road too, because, they try to do as much day of show stuff now as possible, which that's something I'm changing. I go in the night before and, I want to get up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, have a little breakfast, and go to work. I don't want to fly. I had one guy ask me to do a show in Long Island, fly-in day of show from LA. Lose the time. And I said, no, I can't do that. But that worst show, I don't think, I don't know. I've kind of avoided those if I can. Stress from, sometimes there's a lot of stress with some of the bigger shows that are disorganized. I have to organize everything. And it's not my job, but I do it because it will allow me to do my job.
What advice would you give to yourself if you went back 11 years?
Oh, 11 years or 50 years?
No, let's just go in this time frame. So 11 years ago, what advice would you give yourself that would make a difference today?
I don't think I'd change anything. I really enjoy it. I probably would have tried to drop off some of the, and hand them over to my assistant, Jose, who you've worked with. I think you've seen him here at my place. Been with me 14 years now. I'd hand off some of the smaller things to him. I want to focus my time on, more creative personal endeavors for me, like producing. I produce records too, so yeah. I would have spent more time doing that. And I'm doing that now. I've done a few things in the last year that have, maybe 2 years, that are me as producer. I don't get paid for them, but the payback is so much more than financial, because the creative outlet you get. So there's been 3 or 4 projects I've worked on in the last 2 years that have been for me. And I would have done more of that. Looking back 11 years, I would have done more of that for me. More for me stuff,
Is there anything that you dislike doing today that you didn't back then?
Yeah. Yeah. And same thing as I just said, working on some of the smaller things. It's just, I want to work on stuff that people are going to hear and stuff that pleases me musically, or at least musician. I may not have to like the music, but I like the way it's performed. The musicianship, the quality of the production. I'd like that much more. Back then, it's a gig. I get to pay a mortgage with this money coming in. This is important, but I don't need to do that now. I want stuff that rewards me creatively.
What do you still want to accomplish?
2 more countries.
Okay. Yeah.
I know what they are, and I know when. As soon as hurricane season's over, get to 100. I have a couple other travel things I want to do, and probably will before June. Musically, I want to keep working, as I say, more for creative things for me. I'm doing one now that's phenomenal. Do you know who Hermeto Pascoal is or was? He just passed away.
I know who he is, yeah.
Yeah, the Brazilian, unbelievable musician. So I was assistant engineer on a record he did at Paramount. It's a classic record called Slaves Mass. And I was assistant on it, and they recorded pigs on it and stuff. It's phenomenal. So I found out he was playing at the one of the downtown theater, I think the Mayan Theater. So I called the promoters. I called their office and said, I want to do sound for that. I just want to, for me, And they checked me out and they said, well, what do you do? I told them. They said, okay, you can do it. So I went in and volunteered to do the sound. And after sound check, I went and said hello. And of course, it's been 45 years since we did that. He didn't remember me, but he remembered the sessions. And he made a little painting for me of a musical score and about his visit to Los Angeles. So I've had this. It's very beautiful. Waterhouse piece of art. And so my Brazilian friend, hey, he passed away about 3 weeks ago. He passed away. Actually, he's 95. And so we should record that as a tribute to him. So we did it. And we called in some really big musicians in the Brazilian and Latin scene, and they all came in, and we did it in my studio. You've been here. We did it all live.
Right.
And the joy I get from doing those is just, I would rather do that. Of course, I have to pay my bills like everybody, and then run my business. But those kind of rewards creatively beat any money, So I want to keep doing more of those.
One more travel thing.
Okay.
Well, two more. So what are the two countries that you want to go to?
Well, the last, I think Trinidad and Tobago, which is North Caribbean. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's right. It's not far. It's about an hour south of Bahamas. I want to go there. That'll be 99, and number 100 will be Bahamas. They're easy to do.
Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't been to Bahamas yet.
I know. Every time I go to Florida, I go, I should go. And of course you can't because you're too busy, but
yeah.
Busy. And then the second trip, I want to do Tibet, Nepal, Bhutan, and maybe India. Maybe some African countries. I've been to everywhere in South America except Venezuela. If you go from North Pole to South Pole, I've been to every country except Venezuela, and I don't think it's really a good time to go right now.
You'll enjoy this. I was in a mastermind group with the woman. We got to talking about traveling, and she did a mileage run at the end of the year to Kathmandu.
Wow. Oh, wow.
She went to Kathmandu. She stayed for half a day, turned around and came back.
Wow.
And she got her miles.
Yeah. I know about those. I've done them. Now you can do those mileage runs on your credit card. So
yes, right. That's exactly what happens, actually.
Yeah, I bought a essential heating and air for my little house out there in the desert, and I said, you got to run the card before December 20.
Yeah, I've done that too.
Card, but you could put it in January, so that I did. And I got to my next status.
That's important when you're traveling. You really need that.
Absolutely. People don't realize that.
Yeah, it's important to those of us who travel a lot. It's like, boy, I need that status.
Got to get in that lounge.
Yes. I mean, it just makes traveling so much easier. It has nothing to do with bragging rights or anything like that, because who cares? It's just for the ease of travel, for sure.
Yeah, amazing.
This is very cool. Again, you've been my number one guest. You've been on more than anybody else. And it's because you always bring it. You always have something interesting to talk about. And a lot of it has to do with your travels. You're traveling in different places, interesting places that most people don't get to. So when you hear insights, and especially insights about the gigs you're doing, I know it excites me to hear that. So I'm sure it does for other people too.
Yeah, it's interesting life. Well, you have, if you want to have an interesting life, you have to make it interesting. So that's what we do, sit around and watch TV. Nope, I'm going to go somewhere. I do have one other place I want to go to too, is Iran. But people go, you shouldn't go there. But I might just, after I get to 100, there's like 3 places they say, absolutely, you shouldn't travel there. But after 6 months ago, did I tell you I went to Central America? Belize, no. Nicaragua, El Salvador, and Guatemala. That was another one. And I went to El Salvador, and they're going, you can't go there right now. And it was completely safe. Absolutely. Now, they said, well, if you came here 10 years ago, you would have got mugged. But it was absolutely beautiful. So I'm thinking I'm going to go to some of these places. They say you probably should beware. Of course, I'm not going to do stupid stuff, but I'd love to go to Iran. That's the history and culture there is just like no other place in the world.
It's a shame it's sanctioned and cut off, but there's a lot of that going on in the world, unfortunately.
And unfortunately.
Well, very cool. Thank you, Dennis.
You got it.
Thanks for listening and being in my inner circle. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, you can send them to questions@bobbyowsinski.com. You can also learn all about the latest in music, audio, and production news, and find out about openings for my latest online classes at bobbyowsinski.com. This is Bobby Owsinski. I will see you next time